Okay, this video is called Why Processed Food is Always Bad. So first of all, you should know what is good. Just real fast, the best diet is 100% organic, 100% vegan, low fat, low sodium. It's also good to be low protein, but especially low fat and low sodium. Whole foods, single ingredient only one ingredient. No oil, no sweeteners, no sweets. I wouldn't eat anything that's in a powder form, no caffeine. Okay. All right, so now let's go through why. You're always going to have in processed foods high sodium and low potassium and magnesium. That's the opposite of what you want. And the reason is the way human cells work is inside of a cell, you're always going to have high potassium and high magnesium. That's good. On the outside of the cell, the extracellular space is like salt water, seawater. That's how life on Earth was made by God. And so what that means is it's always that way. In the salt water, there's also high calcium because the water rinses on the rocks and it rinses that into the seawater. When you take a processed food, you'll start with a food, let's say you might begin with a whole food, but they're going to grind it down and smush it. Then they're going to rinse it with water, rinse it with solvents, and they rinse away all the potassium and all the magnesium. Then they add salt to it, sodium chloride, to flavor it. They also add salt to it because it has a function as a preservative. It creates hyperosmolarity, and that kills stuff. Stuff can't grow in it, bacteria and mold, fungi. Okay, so high sodium, low potassium, magnesium, that means it predisposes you to hypertension. It predisposes you to dysfunction of all your plasma membrane ATP pumps. That's bad. You don't want that. That causes hypertension and a whole bunch of other metabolic problems. The next thing is that almost always will have some mold inhibitor in there. A mold is fungus, so it's a fungus inhibitor, mold inhibitor, same thing. Typically, it's going to be a succinic dehydrogenase enzyme inhibitor, which is complex 2 of the intermitochondrial membrane for electron transport on the mitochondria. It's also part of Krebs cycle, okay? And so it will damage your mitochondrial ATP production, energy production. It'll damage your Krebs cycle. That's the heart, the center of your metabolism, okay? Just like hypoxia can cause a Warburg effect and increase your risk of cancer, mitochondrial inhibitors can also cause, by causing damage to oxidative metabolism with oxygen, they can increase your risk of cancer. They can decrease your energy level. They can activate all these secondary pathways you don't want activated, like activate the Warburg effect, subsequently leading to anaerobic glycolysis, pumping out of the cell of lactate and the associated proton of lactic acid. So they mimic cancer metabolism. You get it? That's bad. That's why those processed foods, they can sit on the shelf for a year and not spoil because of all these fungal inhibitors in them. Okay, they also will very often have food dyes. Well, very often food dyes are mitochondrial inhibitors, and they can be neurotoxic in other ways and cause, bad behavior in kids, hyperactivity, etc. Emulsifiers are chemicals that sort of can be part fat, part hydrophobic, part hydrophilic to hold the whole thing together. And guess what? A lot of them cause leaky gut. Leaky gut predisposes to autoimmune disease, predisposes to blood clotting through amyloid clotting, because bacterial endotoxin can get across the gut barrier with leaky gut. They're also low in fiber. So being lacking in fiber, the diet also predisposes to leaky gut, because dietary fiber binds with the good gut bacteria. They form butyrate, butyric acid, short-chain fatty acid. The gut lining cells use that to make their tight junctions. So when you eat a lot of processed food, you're predisposed to leaky gut. They're typically not organic. They typically got glyphosate in them. Glyphosate is associated with increased risk of leaky gut. Glyphosate is also thought to be a brain excitotoxin activating the NMDA receptor because it's a coincident detector binding simultaneously to glutamate and the glycine. Glyphosate is a glycine mimic, the amino acid glycine, meaning it's glycine plus a phosphate. It's a little more than that, but that's basically what it is for our understanding purposes. Glyphosate is also associated with increased risk of fatty liver, which means diabetes of the liver. Not good. Diabetes is associated with cognitive decline, dysfunction of everything in your body. Typically, processed food is flavored with MSG or MFG, monosodium glutamate, or manufactured free glutamate. Manufactured free glutamate just means the more you process the food, the more you break up the individual proteins and free up the glutamates. Okay? That's all the body cares about is the glutamate. It doesn't care about the MS or the MF. The second ingredient, when there's a processed food, as soon as they add a second ingredient, they can add stuff to it like MS, monosodium glutamate, MFG, without telling you. So who knows what's in it once there's a second ingredient. So I never eat anything that has a second ingredient. Processed foods with all the MSG, MFG, salt and fat and frying of them, they're often hyperpalatable. They taste good. But, it's like sleeping with a hooker. A very, very dangerous thing to do. She might look good when you first glance at her, but, not a good idea. So I'm joking, but what am I getting at? The countries where people eat a lot of processed food, they have the highest rates of obesity in the world, like the Nauru Island, the ones that sold their soil and had to get processed food shipped in. Marshall Islands, they also eat lots of processed food. They're all super fat. They're like the fattest people in the world. Typically, processed food is sweetened with high fructose corn syrup. That's often contaminated with mercury. To grow the high fructose corn syrup, to grow the corn, it's not organic. It's sprayed with atrazine, which is a major, highly estrogenic chemical. It's also a mitochondrial inhibitor. So it feminizes you and takes your energy away. Great. The typical protein source for processed food is going to be soy. Soy is goitrogenic and it's estrogenic. That goitrogenic means bad for your thyroid. It's often processed with hexane, which can be neurotoxic. So isn't that great? Goitrogenic, estrogenic, neurotoxic, increasing your risk of infertility. So when all these people tell you soy is good, they're full of crap, okay? They're either ignoramuses or liars, okay? People who've really read the research on soy, the old stuff, not the new stuff. The new stuff's all corporate saying soy is wonderful. You read the old stuff and you won't ever want to have soy. You won't want one bite of it, okay? And it's usually going to be sprayed with glyphosate, the non-organic stuff in the modern world. Caffeine is sometimes added, like the soda pop and energy drinks. It's basically putting stress in a bottle, okay? And if it's a plastic bottle, you've got increased risk of microplastics. Great. If water is used to make it, it's likely going to be tap water, meaning fluoride, aluminum, EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, typically means estrogenic chemicals. Other additives are like aspartame, which is neurotoxic. It's an excitotoxin, also activates the NMDA receptor, glutamate receptor, calcium channel. Stevia, which is associated with increased risk of infertility. All the artificial sweeteners have toxic features to them. A lot of them are prothrombotic. Benzoate increases the risk of hyperactive behavior, etc. And there's other ones we don't even have time to get into. They're often fortified with iron. Lots of processed foods are fortified with iron. This predisposes to becoming iron overloaded. When you're iron overloaded, you get increased free iron. Free iron, ferrous redox cycles, Fe2 plus, Fe3 plus, can give off electrons to feed the Fenton reaction, Fe for ferrous, for iron, rust, red in Latin, but it can also activate Fenton, Fe for Fenton reaction, and lead to things like lipid peroxidation, amyloid clotting, all really bad. Ultra-processed foods, UPF means ultra-processed foods, are often heated a lot during processing. It's associated with very high levels of AGEs, advanced glycation end products. Those damage tissues. Those increase the risk of causing autoimmune disease by distorting the shape of proteins. They also are pro-inflammatory. They cause a lot of problems, so you don't want them. Even if a food is a single ingredient, it could be heated up in its processing and lead to AGEs. Powder processed foods like protein supplement powders, bad idea. All these spices that are powder spices, I would never eat any of that stuff. They're very often contaminated with heavy metals. You can see that if you read books like Health Ranger guy wrote Food Forensics. You can look at TamaraRubin.com site. She's a lead safe mama. You can read Consumer Reports, about all these powder foods being contaminated with heavy metals. This is not my opinion. I'm telling you, this is well known. Anybody who reads about food toxicology literature. So anyways, processed foods are a loser. You only get one life. Why poison yourself, make yourself fat, sick, and stupid like the average chump? Why not avoid this stuff? It's pretty easy to do.